Moscowitz, Monday through Friday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, live and usually live on YouTube and subscribing platforms. Russ, so you were saying?
Well, I was talking to my colleagues, and I've been really railing on Trump. I've been on a couple of shows, and the last one I did with Dino Ryan, I really hammered on Trump. And my colleagues said, I thought you were kind of equal opportunity guy. Third rail, equal opportunity guy. And I said, well, you know what? You're right. I need to go on with Charles, and I'll rail on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So that's why that's what brings me to your lair.
Well, all right. Let's go right to it. I mean, what could be a more important story right now than what I would argue is the big steal? The big steal of the election, and I think that evidence is so obvious, and it's not even barely denied that this has been a complete and total election steal on all levels. It's not a matter of individual voter fraud, which is probably rare because it's a felony and people probably don't do that. It has to do with election fraud. Entire states.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the right term. Right. Yeah. Election fraud. And anytime you hear voter fraud, it's usually from the Lugan press trying to diminish everything.
Well, they're trying to play a little rope-a-dope. I mean, it's kind of a distraction.
It's really bad because even though I'm not a Trump supporter or fan, or I'm a critic of Trump, it's just going to ruin elections for decades if they don't deal with this. It just sets the stage for some kind of a total destruction of American democracy, what's left of it, and it's a bunch of cockroaches. It really is, and it's we've been talking about it all year in terms of the looting, the all the things that have kind of emerged throughout 2020, and this just seems to be a continuation.
It's the last thing we have left of any semblance of freedom is the right for one man, one vote, and I think that most people now openly know, and I think everyone at least somewhat knows in their heart of hearts that that's over. Every kind of fraud has been employed here, both the usual fraud that exists in the big cities with their corrupt Democrat machines that have been controlling those cities for decades out of fraud. What they do is this, and this is what I understand. They have people on the voter rolls who've either passed away or who have moved out of state and obviously didn't vote, but their names are on the rolls. And after the polls close, you have corrupt clerks go in, look at the list, see who didn't vote, and then they vote for them. And I mean, this goes way back. I mean, Chris Matthews, the guy who used to be the liberal commentator on MSNBC before he was Me Too'd, he talked about this when he was growing up in Philadelphia, seeing this going on. I mean, this was covered in the novel The Last Hurrah, which of course is about Boston Mayor James Michael Curley in my own home city, and how he used to have this character go around to the different precincts and vote for dead people. I mean, it's kind of almost a joke, but yet this is the more conventional style of stealing. And it's interesting to note that only in the big cities of Detroit, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, and Atlanta did the vote come in so heavily for Biden that it actually exceeded in some cases the numbers of registered voters. Whereas in the other big cities, and these are liberal cities like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Biden didn't get that kind of vote. I mean, he actually got less votes than Hillary did. So that should tell you something right there. But what's even bigger?
I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, the even bigger story besides the conventional, voting from the grave is this Dominion software. I don't know if you're following this.
Right.
But this is something that liberals have
what's interesting is the Dominion software was spotted by 4 key Democratic legislatures last year. And Elizabeth Warren, Ron Biden, Amy Klobuchar, that's how you pronounce his name, and I don't know, some congressmen who are actually pretty good Democrats in a lot of ways. I think they're at least halfway responsible. They may be partisan, but at least they're halfway responsible. And they issued a letter saying this is a very problematic software. It's got, it's just wrought with danger. And
Oh yeah, I mean
nobody did anything about it. I mean, nobody.
Well,
I mean, I think I said in my podcast with Dino, I said, this was an opportunity for Trump to do some bipartisan collaboration.
And he didn't do diddly squat. No, Trump has some blame here for doing nothing for 4 years with regard to this kind of like electronic dictatorship, and that's what we're looking at right now. The Dominion software was started according to Sidney Powell, who is this powerhouse lawyer in the Trump reelection team, and who has made reference to releasing the Kraken. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, how's it coming? I mean,
we're waiting. We're waiting every day.
I want the hammer to drop on this.
I want really the Kraken.
I don't want to see these elections being ruined by anybody and just being stolen. I mean, stolen is being kind. It's just cockroaches.
Well, you know something. I think that if the public becomes more aware of this, if it is laid out, most people, including people who hate Trump, including Democrats, are going to reject that because nobody wants to see that happen. And according to Sidney Powell, Dominion software was started in Venezuela as a technology that would help Hugo Chavez. Then it goes off to several countries, Cuba, Brazil. There's Chinese involvement. Talk about foreign interference in an election. And that the CEO of this company, Dominion Software, or the creator of Dominion Software, this guy named Eric Coomer, is a radical leftist, and he's a supporter of Antifa, and he's been on record saying, F Trump, we're going to stop him. And one of the CEOs now is formerly Nancy Pelosi's chief of staff.
Right. The thing is that I just kind of wonder, how did this all get set up? See, I just keep rolling this over in my mind, how these cockroaches can just move in impunity, and they got it in 30 states. I mean, not every county, right, but all over the United States, they've got the software in there. We had the clue with Project Veritas, the wonderful exposure that he did on Minneapolis of how they ballot harvest votes and pay for it, and nothing ever came out of that. So,
well, what's the deal, Russ? Why do you think we have this justice system that is ignoring what can only be described as real capital crimes? I mean, this goes back to Hillary's emails and the Benghazi and the uranium deal with Putin. There's no justice in this country anymore. If you're on the left, you can nod and move on, and it gets covered up. What the hell? I mean, what do you think?
It's got to be a whole major semester in political science someday. I mean, I would like to see Trump's. I'll definitely read Trump's autobiography if he ever writes one. If he ever if he ever exposes the truth, maybe some.
Well, I think that's what he's trying to do now.
Maybe he'll go away and defeated and say, you know what? I'm going to expose everything I know, everything that I didn't talk about, how I got tricked, what my part in it. Maybe a true confessional. Combination.
Listen, I listened to Jeff Kuhner in the morning here in Boston. He's a very good guy, and he has insider information with Trump. He knows Trump, and he knows people up there. And he was talking this morning. He says that if, in fact, God forbid, Trump does lose and that the Democrats pull this off, most Americans know it was stolen, and that Trump is going to run in 4 years. He's going to come back, that the Republicans are going to take the 2 seats in Georgia, and maybe more, that the majority Democrats in the House is so thin that it's as thin as it's ever been in 60 years, and the radicals, the squad, has doubled its numbers, so they've become more marginalized, and that Trump will continue on, and that 2 years from now there'll be a huge red wave in the House elections and the Congress, and that he'll come back in 4 years, and that what's happening now is what Jeff Kuhner described as a Pyrrhic victory. It's Pearl Harbor. The Japanese were able to kill Americans and destroy the Navy at Pearl Harbor, but they lost the war. They signed their death warrants that day, and it took a while, but eventually they were completely and totally defeated. And I mean, the Pyrrhic reference, of course, is to Roman times when the Greeks defeated the Roman army at the Battle of Pyrrhus. But Rome overwhelmed Greece shortly
Well,
afterwards.
I think something like that may happen. Personally, I hope it's not Trump that comes back. I hope that they find somebody else that's maybe more adept at creating their. It just didn't seem like he had the ability to get good people around him. He sort of got. I don't know what the inside story of why he appoints a lot of these people. But there's another case, and let me just go over this real quick, because I don't want to rail on Trump, but this has to be mentioned. So my point is that Trump had 4 years to appoint people to agencies like the FBI, the DOJ, inspectors general. I mean, he fired 5 inspectors generals this year.
Right.
Not a very opportune time for that, because these are the people that could go out and expose some of this stuff, and should have been in the Homeland Security. And then he appoints this cybersecurity czar, Christopher Krebs, who has responsibility for election infrastructure. And he came over from big tech. He was with Microsoft specifically. And so he comes in and runs this whole program, story from the Hill from last year. DHS Cyber Agency invest in election auditing tools to secure the 2020 election. So this is Department of Homeland Security. This is the big mucky muck that's protecting from some of this stuff, this Dominion type stuff, supposedly. Mm-hmm. And here's the second to last paragraph. He says they conduct an audit of vote by selecting how many ballots and which ballots to audit and comparing the audited votes to the original count. So in theory, this guy, who is a Trump supporter, has been doing this. Okay, the tool has already been used to conduct post-election audits across the country, including during the recent 2019 elections. Election officials in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Virginia, Ohio, and Georgia have signed on to partner with CISA, that's Homeland Security, with more officials to join. So then the election comes about, and what did CISA determine? In a just released joint statement, they said that this was the cleanest, most secure election in American history. And then he sets up, this frigging Krebs sets up a website called, what did he call it? Rumor control website. This is the DHS putting up a rumor control website. And what does he do? He debunks all the claims that we've been talking about right here.
Something.
He calls it a nonsense. He calls it a hoax.
Yeah,
Trump fired him 2 days ago. He's gone, but that's too late.
But it is too late. And look, the administration and the Republican Party certainly is riddled with these insiders who seek this coup d'etat. They want to have the United States rejoin the world order and begin once again with perpetual wars and turning the U.S. into a province of the international beehive, something Trump has stood up against. And that the administration is riddled with these people. I mean, I don't know if it's because Trump doesn't have the knowledge or the competence or what, but
either somebody's sabotaging him, and I don't know that anybody's really developed how he makes his appointments, who gives him the ideas. Now, he came in as an outsider, so you don't really expect him to know the insides and out of Washington and who to make the appointments. I had one commentator on my site said that everything has to go by Mitch McConnell, so they kind of blamed it on him. But there's a tendency with Trump to blame it on other people, and the whole idea of the buck stops here didn't seem to exist. So that's my problem with Trump. I
agree. No,
I mean, I don't want Biden. This is a horrific outcome. It really is.
No, I agree. Trump didn't do diddly squat. I mean, he could have done a lot better job of ferreting these people out when he had a chance. If he had done that, we wouldn't be in this mess. You have them both at the federal and state level. This is a huge international octopus. It is like a kraken in a way. It's like they got their tentacles into just about everything. I mean, and it's all coming out now. Look at in Georgia, you've got this so-called Republican Attorney General Brad Raffensperger, who openly is saying Biden won. There's nothing to see here, even though they keep county after county, votes keep showing up that weren't counted. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, they talk about voter suppression. What the hell? I mean, you vote and 2 weeks later you find out that your vote wasn't counted and it would never have even been discovered if there wasn't pressure applied. And then you get this judge in Pennsylvania who says that who denies the Trump legal team the right to sue because the governor and the state Supreme Court had changed the law 2 days before the election, which is unconstitutional because the Constitution says that the legislature has the sole authority to regulate election law. And these people are swamp. Like what Trump says, they're swamp people. But the thing is that they're not going to let Trump win. I mean, we just have in Michigan, in Wayne County, 2 Republicans have stood up and said they're not going to certify the vote. They're under death threats. They're being attacked. They're called racists. Apparently, there's something against black people.
There's probably threats. They probably have compromised people.
My God,
probably infiltrated people. I mean, this Krebs guy just blows my mind. How quick he was to just declare that this is no problem with this election, and that's
which was a complete lie.
Yeah, and it's a government agency under the control. Yeah. I shouldn't say the control of Trump. Obviously, he had no control. Or
yeah. Mark Levin did a good piece on this guy. He said that he interviewed the Secretary of State of Michigan, or Wisconsin, who's a Republican, or the Speaker of the House of Wisconsin, who's a Republican, who is bringing all kinds of charges against the state and wants to investigate the fact that 130,000 Biden votes showed up on Lake Michigan that morning after they shut down the polls. And Levin asked him, did this guy Krebs ever contact you to ask you about what was going on? No, never did. What the hell does he know? He didn't know anything about the election. He just made this declaration. It was outrageous.
Yeah, he's in infestation.
Exactly.
I mean, the thing that concerns me now, I mean, the expectations are kind of odd, and probably if Trump is going to turn this thing around, it'll have to be through not certifying certain states, and he needs 2 or 3. He needs Pennsylvania and one other, or maybe 3, some combination, and they don't certify it, but they don't certify Trump as the winner either. So then you're left with this sort of poison chalice situation.
Well, what happens is that, first of all, I think that if these 2 canvases in Wayne County hold the ground, and Wayne County is not certified, then Michigan is going to flip to Trump. And
explain to me how that works, because I'm not quite clear that they would actually flip it to Trump. I think
because if you take away Wayne County, which is Detroit, which is where most
you just nullify all of Trump.
Yeah, they will not certify the vote, and you just count the rest of the state. Then Trump wins.
Man.
So that's
going to make the Biden supporters happy.
This could really be.
Obviously Biden had a showing there.
Yeah, but this is like if they hold the line, this could be a game changer, because if Michigan goes, the country goes. That'll take Biden out of the column of enough electoral votes, and you'll have and they'll add that to Trump. So you'll have like a situation where similar to the 2 popes. There won't be.
Yeah, I'm calling it. The term I've heard for it is a dusty finish in wrestling. You have a wrestling match and one guy's winning, and the crowd's all cheering, the partisans for the one guy, and then right at the last minute on some technicality, the other guy wins. It's called a dusty finish.
No, that's funny.
They start hurling abuse on the referees.
That's a good one.
And that's not going to be nice. That's color revolution stuff. And
well, what's going to happen? Well, what'll happen is that if the states don't certify an election day, and the date comes when the electoral college has to vote, which is I think the 7th of December, then it goes to the U.S. House, and it doesn't mean we're not talking U.S. House with Nancy Pelosi. We're talking about each state appoints one delegate. Yeah. And that delegate is appointed by the state legislatures. Right. And Republicans control 31 state legislatures. So that means that Trump wins.
My friend, you're describing a dusty finish, and that's going to be ugly.
Oh, yeah, no question. Trump will win.
It might be justice in some ways, but really not.
You know something? I think that if it happens and everyone knows that Trump won anyways, I think that Trump will crack down on any kind of rebellion like that. He'll have, once that is in the can, he will then have a free hand to move against any kind of communist revolution, and do so with vigor.
Jesus.
It won't be pretty, but it'll. I think it'll.
I don't like the setup at all. I really don't. That's just horrible.
Well, look at. I mean, it's preferable to the letting this revolution, this steal take place, which is going to hurt this country in ways that we can't even calculate. I mean, the rest of the world.
It's a poison chalice for whoever wins.
It is. I had a guy on yesterday who was from Africa. He's from Cameroon, who's written a very interesting book about African politics, and we talked about the election. And he said it reminds him and it reminds people in his circles of the kind of coup d'etat that they would see in African countries and in Asian countries, where the coup master would come in, be declared the winner. The media, they would capture the radio station, so they had the megaphone to continue, and they would affect it. They would then grab every major institution in the country and seize control. That's what this is. That's what this looks like to the rest of the world, and that's what it is, right? You had three major networks, and by the way, none of the other ones did it. Simply declare that Biden had won, and he is going around now calling himself president-elect, which is untrue because the president-elect only is called that once they're certified. And then you have the big media and all their friends in big tech and the Boston Globe here in Boston proceeding as if he's the winner and talking about what his cabinet's going to look like and this and that.
And you got fifth column traders everywhere in all these blue states. You got fifth column traders within the Trump administration. I mean, Shakespeare couldn't beat this. This is just has all the elements.
That's true.
To me, it seems, to be honest with you, all kind of scripted.
Well,
the thought has entered my mind more than once.
How so? Talk about that.
Just because the way of how all the ingredients came together throughout the year, just kind of watching this change going on, asking the question, well, how did these fifth columnists, who elected the mayor? How did this mayor of Seattle get in there? This mayor of Portland? Those are cities I lived in. I'm familiar with those cities.
Probably through voter fraud.
Yeah, exactly.
They control. Look, I think that these corrupt big city machines, people say to me when I brought this up, I had someone say, well, the Republicans do this also. And I don't doubt that they do. But the difference is that the Republicans don't control these big populated cities. They control maybe a suburb or the rural areas of a state. You can look at a map of the red and blue, and you see that the blue spots are only in the big cities for the most part. So, they don't have that kind of control, even if they were to cheat like that. And I doubt if they do.
Well, they combined it with mail-in ballots, which Trump did point that out to his credit. I mean,
sure.
He said this is going to be a problem. It almost sounded like more of a prediction than anything else. What did he do to try to circumvent it?
And not only that, but apparently there was a so-called Blue Ribbon Commission headed that was started in the Carter Library in Atlanta, and that was co-chaired by former President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker. That came out with a report in around 2010, I think, which advised against going to a mail-in system, against mail-in ballots, that it would be corrupted, that it would be wrought, as I said, wrought with fraud. So, the complaint they filed in Philadelphia, 109 pages. I read through that, and it does talk about the problems, how problematic that mail-in balloting. It quotes a lot of the guys you just quoted, Carter and Baker, other people. There's a lot of precedent out there. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Warning that this is going to be a big problem, and yet they just let it happen on the excuse of COVID. They don't want people. Yeah. Oh, we can't have grandma getting a cold, or we can't have.
Right. Of course, that is the excuse, and it's a ridiculous excuse because, if you could go to the grocery store, you could go to vote, and if you really are that uncomfortable with it, and you're 80 years old, or you have a pre-existing condition, you can request an absentee ballot, and that is confirmed and then sent to you. I mean, that's what I did. That's been in place for half a century. That goes way back.
Once you get those ballots out there, then you get the ballot harvesting, which actually was paid for by taxpayers to gather these things up, and then that's where you get the Project Veritas exposure.
That's right. Exposure. I mean, they were like signing up homeless people in California, and Yeah, I mean that's a obviously a clear case for fraud.
Well, you're
And
gonna to do this right. They're gonna have to come out and really show some concrete examples of what happened. And
they have to. Yeah.
I'm kind of on the lookout, kind of hearing. And if they don't, and then they just do this dusty finish period, then
it's going to be ugly.
It's going to get ugly. The whole country's going to blow up, and you're going to get an awful lot of just normal Democrats out on the street. And once that happened, you're going to get the color revolution. And I wrote an article on that. There's been about 22 color revolutions in the last 2 decades, and they all follow the same pattern. Snipers on the rooftop. And snipers on the rooftop are usually mercenaries that have been brought in from the outside. But the snipers start killing people, and then that gets attributed to the regime, and they start using the term bloody regime. In other words, try to pin it on the Trump administration. And passions are so bad already that then you get the international, you get the Pope calling up,
right.
Donald, you got to leave, and it works. They really force these guys out of office. So that's another outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. I think
dusty finish followed by a color revolution, followed by snipers,
which they did in the Ukraine, I think.
They've done it a lot. They did it on Tunisia, Egypt.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. The recently last Sunday, you had the Million MAGA March in Washington, and I think in a couple of other cities, and you even had the Proud Boys coming out, and for the most part, it went off okay. I mean, I expected what you're describing to happen. There to be shooting and there to be instances that
the Biden camp still thinks they're ahead and they're going to win because the way the media presents it. So it hasn't been snatched. There's a big difference between thinking you haven't won and then all of a sudden it's snatched away from you.
Well, Giuliani was on last night. I heard him on Newsmax, and he said, look, we've got 5 major lawsuits right now that are still active in these states. We're going to be filing several more in the next day or two. And if we win if we win 3 of them, then we've got the election. So
it may happen. It may happen. I think the odds are there that it could happen. But
yes.
But then it's not over. Still the dusty finish. Still the color revolution.
I think you're right. We better buckle up seatbelts and be ready for that. I mean, it is going to be ugly. It'll be, in any way that Trump wins, it's going to be nasty. But I think that most Americans are going to reject that. I think that they're going to stay away from it, and it'll boil over. They can yell and scream all they want. Trump is going to lay out the fact, and I think that hopefully the key, I mean, the real wild card in this is going to be Sidney Powell's Kraken. If she can release the Kraken and show with irrefutable evidence.
She talks a mean book.
Oh, she does. I mean, she says that she's got more evidence pouring in every day. She says it's like a fire hose. And if they've got allegedly up to 1,000 affidavits, and affidavits are evidence. That's sworn testimony under the pain of perjury, where people come in and they tell their story. That's like testifying before. It's like testifying before Congress. That and they're building a huge, case with those. I mean, we're talking up to 1,000, and you have some whistleblowers. You notice how they loved the whistleblowers during the perfect phone call hearings, but now all of a sudden whistleblowers. There's this one guy from the CIA who was blowing a whistle about CIA technology that was put in place after 9/11 to monitor Islamic terrorism that Obama turned into a political football to monitor elections and votes. You've got other people.
I'm sure they've been laying the groundwork for this for the day Trump got in.
I mean, you saw Biden himself admitted, even though he might have been speaking out of dementia, we don't even know if he's got, he's not playing with a full deck. But nevertheless, he said, we under the Obama years, we built the most comprehensive vote stealing machine in the history of American politics.
Well, he also said, I don't need you for the election. I need you after the election. That's an odd thing to say. What an odd thing to say.
And why was he just hiding out all the whole time? I mean, there was nothing really going on because they probably knew that the fix was in. And
Yeah, it sure sounded that way to me. It sure sounded that me the way. He's just kind of slipped and
the
Freudian
whole
slipped.
thing
You can't.
stinks to high heaven. I think most people know it. Whether and I think if Biden wins, there'll be a color revolution.
Possibly.
I mean, it's
Possibly. Yeah, either way, exactly.
yeah. I mean, it's going to
wouldn't
be.
rule that out either.
We're heading down into the whirlwind. I mean,
But
it's very,
it just seems like you couldn't plan a better takedown of a country than this.
These are very hazardous times, and I still think that ultimately Main Street America will prevail with a clear head. If they can simply just show the evidence, I think enough Americans, moderate Americans, good Democrats, everyone is going to accept that. But they have to lay it out. Where's the Kraken? I want to see.
I promised my colleagues that I would kind of go over some of Biden's policies with you.
Please, let's go to it.
These are pretty good. This is what you can expect under Biden.
Thank you.
He's calling for about 6 weeks of lockdown, scandemic lockdown. It's just to kind of warm everything up, get everybody just hunkered down for 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And there's a tendency for that to always be made a little longer. I mean, that's what's going on here in the Czech Republic. They just Czech Republic. We have a 9 o'clock curfew, and they keep extending it and extending it and extending it. And the statistics look kind of funny. Sometimes they fall off, and then you get a big spike. So then he's going to double the minimum wage. So already you have retail shut down, you have restaurants shut down, you have hospitality shut down, and you double the minimum wage, and that adds about 30% to the expense of restaurants, and adds some social distancing so they can't totally utilize their space, and you just totally wipe out the restaurant, retail, and hospitality industry.
That's
boom.
Right.
That's how you start out your administration, and then you basically expand the asylum to allow something like over 200,000 new refugees, so-called refugees, to come into the country. And then you expand the HB1 visa to allow more foreigners to take the lost jobs of the people that you wiped out in the restaurant and all these other industries, and the Americans that are already here. And then they have something called Section 230, which is kind of gives the big media, the big tech media, social media, kind of a no liability for what people say online. He wants to take that away. So what sounds really cool, that you basically make the big platforms liable for what people say online.
Right.
Well, that's just total Orwellian censorship. That gives them the excuse to just take everything down. Follow?
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't think they're going to get away with it because of the Republican Congress and because of the Republican-dominated Supreme Court and federal court bench, which I think is going to come into play. I think that Trump, if there's anything we can say positive, it's that he did leave a strong infrastructure in place. He was good for this election for Congress. We have
two key Georgia elections. That's going to really be important.
Yeah, and I think
but what if you got a couple of traitors among these? There's traitors everywhere. We got a couple of traitors among the Republicans to get this thing passed for whatever reason.
Look at Raffensperger over in Georgia. No, there are some very Mitt Romney. I mean,
how about even Cruz? He acts like he hates this social media, so he might be the kind of guy that would just green light this.
Yeah,
with unintended consequences.
I think the social media has everyone by the short and curlies, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody wants to get their big face on television. They want to. It's very alluring, and if they're going to shut you down, it's almost a form of blackmail. They do control the major means of communication. Now, having said that, there has been a major shift in the media for people to leave YouTube and go to Rumble, and leave Twitter and go to Parler, and then there's a few other ones out there. There's Gab. There's a move generally to shift away. In fact, Parler got a higher. I think they got more hits than Twitter over the weekend. So
what if Trump goes to a new platform after he gets
that's
tossed out? That would be the ultimate revenge. I'm closing my Twitter account and I'm going to go over to Parler and Gab.
Exactly. No, I think that
that could be one of the best things he could ever do. But will he do it? We'll see.
I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to open up at Parler and Rumble, but I'm not giving up, Twitter and YouTube, even though I've been told by people who know what they're talking about that I've been shadow banned. But
see, I live on Apple TV. I have an Apple TV device, and Apple TV allows you to put the app up, and typically YouTube, which I use a lot. I mean, I go on YouTube a lot. I have some people that I subscribe to. Hey, Charles Moscowitz has a show. Boom, boom, boom. Just go over there and click on that. And it's a lot easier for me to do that there than all these other methods, because I have to go get the computer on. I have to go to these sites, and the delivery is not quite as good. And my eyesight's not real great, so I kind of like to watch it on my big screen TV. So it's just
it's better. No, it's a matter of habit and the technology. I think it was Dinesh D'Souza who just said that he when he switched over to Rumble, he ended up getting a huge surge of followers where he didn't get that on YouTube, which shows that he had been censored on YouTube. So I don't know. I mean, I don't really understand Rumble, but I have an account there and I've downloaded a couple of videos. I'll see. I'm going to see how it looks. We'll see.
Okay, so continuing on, some of his picks. So a lot of talk about Elizabeth Warren for Secretary of Treasury, and I tell you what, to be honest with you, bring it on. I'm tired. I'm tired of these bubbles. I'm tired of these stock market bubbles that they're running, and they're creating huge imbalances. Running up enormous amounts of zombie corporate debt with this Fed enabling, and she would kind of whack that. But I somehow believe she won't actually be appointed.
Well, I mean,
it's just like this. The Wall Street will stop it. They'll just say, "No, Joey, you're not going to do that." It's just
plus, it'll open up a Senate seat in Massachusetts, and people might be in for a shock to see a Republican come up.
Is the governor a Democrat, Republican?
He's a Republican, yeah.
Oh God! All right.
He's like a real kind of a wishy.
You got all the counters to this stuff. That's why I'm glad I'm going over this with you. She's not going to make it. Oh man!
So with a thin margin in the Senate, I don't know if they want to risk that.
Yeah. Plus, Wall Street will never allow it. They just don't seem to get appointments like that. So they want to add $200 more to Social Security. I don't know. Maybe that's okay. Increase the capital gains from 23.8 to 43.1. Pop. There goes the stock market. Yeah. The corporate tax from 21 to 28. Corporate tax is probably a little too low. Got to start. Just give.
That's right.
You got a lot of these things you got to start paying for. He's got large scale student loan forgiveness for $1.7 trillion worth of student loan. I think they're talking about maybe forgiving about half of it. Boy, they're talking about blowing the deficit out and rocketing a big hole in your balance sheet.
Right. And a big gift to the big colleges.
Yeah, and then you've got these hedge funds that own this stuff. So there goes the bubble again. Mm-hmm. You start, doing debt forgiveness, and some of this stuff is going to be necessary. I mean, they're not that crazy ideas, but they're kind of very disruptive.
There's going to be some major disruption no matter how we fly next year, because the deficit is I think it's $15 trillion, and the COVID has added another trillion.
Well, then he wants to provide 2 years of college, so you're going to give 2 years of free college to go be brainwashed in all this cultural Marxism. So that's sounds right up the leftist alley. Pretty expensive, more possible stimulus, huge unemployment checks. So he's got quite it's just kind of mouth-watering stuff that a lot of these Republicans like to support too, because the Republican Party is hardly conservative fiscally.
Well, yeah, I mean the gravy train keeps rolling along. It's you're right. I mean it's insane. It's going to be like the only thing that could possibly turn that around will be a war or something, God forbid.
Or a crash, a big market crash. And then I'm kind of hoping that out of that comes a third rail that sort of goes beyond all this corrupt system that's in play right now, which is kind of why I'm so hard on all sides.
Well, there's plenty of criticism we can lodge at Trump. There's no question about that. My concern right now is whether it be Trump or Biden. I just want to see a clean election, and that ain't going to happen.
We could bring William Jennings Bryan back from the grave.
Oh, I know. What a great man. Yeah. We'll crucify on a cross of gold.
Yeah, some great populist. Exactly.
Well, I mean, what can you say? So, Russ, you wanted to talk a little bit about the secret history.
You mean the hidden history?
Hidden history.
Well, we need to get back to that, but it's almost kind of impossible right now, isn't it? It's to kind of talk about our topics that we were on a good roll on.
It's so unhidden right now.
We're kind of seeing it in play before our eyes. So going back and talking about House and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of,
well, that's where it all started in this country.
Yeah. And, we need to do that when the opportunity comes.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Those are very enjoyable. I think people learn a lot, and unfortunately, it's probably just not the time.
No, we've got too many things that are really earth-shatteringly big right now, and I mean, I just look. I think that regardless of what happens, I still have faith in the average American and in the system. I mean, if Biden is certified and declared as president, even if he did cheat, I'll still recognize him because I recognize this government, unlike the left, which refused to recognize Trump. And I will go into the loyal opposition. I will begin to examine the policies, and I'll criticize where it's bad and praise where it's good. It's all for you have to do what's best for the whole country at some point.
Yeah, but I mean, Biden, you're going to have a color. Here's my prediction: dusty finish, color revolution. Biden gets in there and then starts trying to run with some of these policies, and you'll get a total collapse.
Okay, that's a happy note to end on, right?
Yeah, but maybe the phoenix rises out of all that. Something
exactly. Nothing is preordained, when it comes to man-made government.
Not necessarily ultimately in the end a bad outcome. It could kind of sweep all these cockroaches aside if people start resigning responsibility. Maybe just get Trump out of the way so he's not such a lightning rod, and he can stand by and influence things in his own way as a private citizen, and bring in a whole new regime, a little more populist regime. But that's probably dreaming.
I think that Trump has been a very, relatively, if not very successful president of the United States on all metrics, almost all metrics. And to lose him is a terrible loss to this country, I think. Anyway, so Russ, let my listeners know where they can read your excellent newsletter and anything else you'd like to impart.
Yeah, I'm trying to, like I said, I'm trying to even up the trashing a little bit. So you can wander in and read some good criticism of Biden and kind of how the system works. Winterwatch.net.
Right.
And I'm doing more shows and radio podcasts. I got a couple new partners there. Dino, Ryan, and Giuseppe. God, I can't even pronounce his name. Van Cafulo. Good Italian name.
Great. Well, good stuff. I mean, you're doing well on that Winter Watch. It's a great newsletter, and I recommend it highly. So,
thank you.
All right, Russ. Listen, I'll talk to you soon. Let's do it again soon.
Okay. Bye-bye, Charles.
All right, Russ Winter. Thanks a lot.